Chapter 1. I woke up to the hot Louisiana sun lighting up the tent with colors of blue and silver from the fabric above my eyes. Turning into Kyle's chest, I hid my face under the blanket, attempting to block some of the light. Kyle was still fast asleep, even with the sun raising the temperature inside of the tent. Men, they can sleep through anything. Pulling his arm towards me, I glanced at his watch. It wasn't even 6:30 a.m. I groaned, closing my eyes, hoping that sleep would overtake me again. My dance with sleep ended when a scream erupted from the campsites nearby. Kyle, startled out of his deep slumber, leaned over me protectively. The position gave me a great view of the muscles in his arms and his chest. His cross necklace was brushing against the skin on my neck, causing goosebumps to raise on my tan flesh. If we had been in different circumstances, our closeness would have aroused me. We heard the screams again, this time more intense and closer than they had been before. Kyle jumped this time, going to the door of the tent and opening it only at the top. We looked out into the early morning sun, reflecting off the windows of our cars parked nearby. His hand found mine, squeezing our palms together behind his back. "Josh, get off of him!" Danielle screamed. Her voice was drowned out by the sound of bodies colliding together and hitting the ground. Kyle left the tent, emerging into a small clearing, keeping me securely behind him as we approached the smoldering ashes of our bonfire. Just behind the cloud of thin smoke, Josh was on the ground, pinned under an insane-looking man wearing brown coveralls. Both men were soaking wet and covered in mud. The crazy man was shouting into Josh's face, releasing saliva through his white beard and into Josh's face. "This here is my property, and you're trespassing. You're gonna scare my gators." Josh struggled under the man's weight, but managed to flip himself on top of him. He held up a fist and struck him twice in the face. Josh already had blood trickling down his face from a cut above his eyebrow. The man grabbed Josh by his legs, hooking his hands beneath his knees. He was about to flip them again when Danielle screamed, "Damn it, stop them!" She gestured to Kyle across the clearing. Kyle sighed, shaking his head, walking towards them. He managed to pull Josh off of the man by tugging at his torso. Todd rushed over to help and hold Josh down in case he attacked again. The other man stood up on shaking legs. "You're breaking the law being here. All I did was warn you to leave before I call the law. Now get in your vehicles and get off my property and get the hell out of here." Josh fought against Kyle and Todd's grasp on his arms. Both of them struggled to hold him in place. A year ago, Kyle would have won any physical fight against Josh without much effort. Now they were closely matched, and it bothered me. In the last few months, I'd noticed his appearance harden and his strength grow. Josh had always been very tall, thin, and bony. Now his arms were very muscular, and his stomach showed signs of a six-pack rippling beneath his Jamaican-kissed skin. Because of his long legs, he could run faster and longer than many of the football players. "We're leaving, sir, I promise. We will pack up and get out of here in 15 minutes, Kyle said, with Josh pushing against him, trying to knock him backwards. 15 minutes. Get going." He left, walking towards the water. Kyle dragged Josh off from everyone else. Danielle followed behind him, placing her hand on Josh's shoulder. He shrugged it off and then began kicking the surrounding ground and trees. I noticed his temper slipping a lot recently, and it worried me. But I'd already been warned to stay out of her love life. I met Danielle when I moved to Oakland, Louisiana 7 years ago, and we've been inseparable since then. After my dad passed away, my mother and I moved to rebuild our lives. Danielle was a big part of me being able to move on. She and I have always had each other's backs. That is, until Josh came into the picture. Out of respect for Danielle, I tolerated him, but he has always given me a bad vibe. "Carly, can you run to my truck and get the bag for the tent out of the back?" Kyle said, tossing his keys in my direction. I barely caught them with my pinky before they hit the ground. My long brown hair fell from the messy bun tangled on top of my head. It was still damp with sweat from last night. We were deep in the woods near the bayou. The bugs were swarming in full force, and so was the summer heat. When it gets hot in Louisiana, it is a sticky hot that burns your throat like it could choke you. I thought about the water nearby. It would feel wonderful to jump in right now. Wishful thinking. We had to get out of here. "Here," I said, handing the bag to Kyle and helping him shove the tent into the small surface pouch. "Grab the sleeping bags and the pillows," he said, throwing the tent and the coolers into the bed of his truck. Then he ran around grabbing random things from other campsites. I noticed Danielle walking back from the woods without Josh. I shouted at her through the chaos. "Where's Josh?" I asked, grabbing Kyle's jacket off of the tree branch nearby. She shook her head walking past me. "He took off," she said before she climbed into the back seat of Kyle's double cab truck. Everywhere around us, people finished loading their vehicles, and the campsite was growing empty. Kyle ran past me, touching my arm for a moment. "Get in the truck." I got in the passenger side and slammed my door shut. He put the truck in reverse and backed out of the cluster of trees. Navigating through the rough and uneven terrain was difficult. The tree branches scratched against the truck like fingernails on a chalkboard. He glanced into his rearview mirror and then smashed on the brakes, causing me to jerk forward in my seat. "Where in the hell is Josh?" he asked Danielle. "He took off after he threw his little temper tantrum. I'm not sure where he went. He said he would get home by himself." She held on to the back of my seat with both hands. We watched the redness flush beneath Kyle's skin. "Stupid ass," he muttered under his breath. "If I don't bring him home, his dad's going to kill all of us." Kyle's voice was deep and low as he spoke. He rounded a tree, making a sharp right turn, driving back into the direction we just came from. We knew Josh's dad was an angry man. And of all of our friends, his parents were the strictest. In the year he and Danielle had been dating, they would put him on restriction for the smallest, stupidest things. When he told his parents he was seeing Danielle, they flipped out and laid down all kinds of strict dating rules. On the weekends, his dad forced him to help work on a campsite they had outside of town. He was never allowed to sign up for any after-school activities, not even when he'd made the football team last fall. They did nothing fun or out of the box. As long as I had known him, they hadn't even taken a vacation. His parents acted as if they didn't even care. Danielle rolled down her window so she could get a better view of the woods. Her eyes shifted, searching through the trees, looking for the blue shorts that Josh was wearing. We were back at the campsite driving in circles, hoping we didn't alert the landowner of our presence. "Where'd he go into the woods, Danielle?" Kyle asked, stopping his truck and facing towards the water. "If we get any closer to the bank, we could have gotten out to go on foot. The trees grew thick and the ground dropped about 5 feet before you hit the water." "Near the place where he kicked up the dirt?" Danielle said, opening her door and getting out. Kyle jumped from his seat, running around the front of the truck. He caught Danielle by the arm before she got too far. "Get back in the truck," he hissed at her. She looked out into the woods, ignoring him. "I have to find him," she tugged away. But he held onto her arms with a death grip. "The more noise you make, it increases the chances of us getting caught. We will find Josh, but we need to stay together. We are safer in the truck." She groaned, but she started back towards the truck. She got back in just before a loud gunshot echoed through the woods surrounding us and Kyle. Kyle ducked beside the truck bed, closing Danielle's door from the bottom. I was so shocked I didn't even move from my place on the seat. The same man from earlier appeared from the trees. He was holding out a gun in his right hand. Now that I could see his features clearly, I noticed the glass eye on the right side of his face, a long, deep scar that stretched from his left hand up his arm and onto his shoulder. It looked like claw marks had ripped into his skin. His outstretched arm was shaking like a leaf, supporting the weight of the gun. Something told me his aim wouldn't be very accurate if he decided to shoot. I had seen enough gun accidents growing up in the South. My mom's an attorney and had handled a few of the cases that involved children. It was one of the hardest things she has ever had to do in her career. "I believe that your 15 minutes expired some time ago," the crazy man said, walking towards Kyle. Kyle stood up from his crouching position. He held his hands up, showing a sign of peace. "We are just looking for our friend. After we find him, we'll be out of here." He didn't make any sudden moves, but the man reacted violently anyway. He pointed his gun at Kyle's chest. I stopped breathing, putting my hand on the door, opening it a crack. "Stay in the truck, Carly. The engine is running, and I want you to slide over to the driver's seat and get the two of you out of here." I watched the man hold the gun about a foot away from Kyle's heart. If he pulled the trigger, Kyle was dead. My eyes went wide and my heart raced in terror. I trembled. I was so scared, and it took a lot to scare me. "The girls can stay," the man smiled a toothless grin towards us. "It's you boys that have to go. I can't show the ladies a good time with you running around, can I?" I was outraged at what his words implied. I would shoot myself first if he even attempted to touch me or Danielle.